Hey Brett, thanks for coming on The Local Agent. It's great to have you on. We've had a few from Remax, which has been really good, and no one better than the licensee and director. So yeah, it's good to have you on, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot, and there's going to be a few people who'll be able to pick up some nuggets of wisdom and knowledge as well, I'm sure.
Sure, good to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks. So if you don't mind, I'd love to just ask you how you even got into real estate, and what were you doing before that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's going back a little while now, but depends on how far I go back, but probably the step before real estate would be the best.
Yeah.
We run a mortgage broking company, and we run that under the banner of Mortgage Choice for a few years. And my wife, Alana, she worked in the law industry and had pretty good understanding and knowledge of mortgages and banks, but also property settlements and things like that.
For sure.
So we kind of had blended experience. My background was more sort of around sales and logistics and, a little bit of marketing here and there. So that was kind of my background. So the mortgage broking industry was really beneficial. That was a big learning curve for me because I didn't know much about the compliance and home loans and things like that, but learnt really rapidly. I was in my sort of early 30s when we sort of went on that journey, and we run that for a few years, but I quickly then, I was giving a lot of people mortgage advice, and this is back around, 2004, 2005?
Yeah.
So just over 20 years ago now. And the irony behind it then was, there was nowhere near the technology there is now. So I kind of had a friend in real estate, and I can't even remember the name of the program now, but it's way back before RP Data and all things like that. But he'd be able to print me out some reports. So I'd go and see.
You're still printing stuff out then?
Yeah, he'd drop it off in my letterbox. So I'd ring him up, and he was a great guy, and he actually sold my house that I owned at the time before I was in real estate.
Yeah.
And I'd ring him up, and I'd say to him, look, I've got an appointment tonight. The people live in, Duncraig.
Yeah.
They want to buy in Hillary's, and they might be looking at an investment property. So
that's cool. Then you can just look at them.
So the crazy thing was then he would print these reports out for me.
Yeah. Okay.
And I enjoyed a part of the mortgage process is talking to people about property and their journey and where they might be going next.
Yeah.
So that was a really good segue into real estate, to the point where I was getting so many reports. He in the end just said, look, here's my login. You go in yourself and print your own.
Yeah.
So I started sort of studying real estate pretty passionately.
Yeah.
And providing that service for my mortgage clients.
Yeah, for sure.
And yes, whilst I was doing that, I thought, geez, I should get registered because I got this login. And then I got registered and thought, you can do a diploma in property. So it was a funny sort of set of circumstances, really. We kind of went from mortgages, which we were still doing, to I got my registration, and I knew that you had to be registered for 2 years before you could, if you had a diploma, before you could open an agency. And I guess ignorance was bliss. I just thought, maybe we can open a real estate company as well at some stage.
Yeah.
And with my wife's background, she obviously was proficient in new settlements and the law industry. So, wind that clock forward sort of 18 months, 2.5 years. We very quickly, we opened a mortgage business up in Butler. That was the first operation. We had the first office. And very quickly, we added settlement agent service to that business. And then I was working real estate at that time, assigned to another company, just selling a few properties, here and there.
Okay.
But becoming very comfortable with the real estate process and the transaction.
Yeah. And was this all solo? You were just selling yourself?
So I was just selling by myself at that stage, but I was pretty fortunate because we had the mortgage business. We already had an assistant, plus had Alana, my wife, then, who obviously knew all the compliance and the legal side of things.
Yeah.
So to say that I was running solo probably wouldn't be quite true. I still had lots of people that were sort of doing things off to the side.
Okay.
Because I was just too busy. I was literally doing sometimes 5 to 6 face-to-face appointments a day.
Yeah, wow.
And back 20 years ago, fax machines and in people's lounge rooms in the evening, I was probably 3 or 4 nights a week. You wouldn't be getting into about 11 o'clock at night because...
Okay.
Yeah, everyone wanted to meet face to face back then.
And everyone's working. Most are working 9 to 5. So
correct.
Okay, and so when did you fully transition into real estate?
So when I fully transitioned into real estate, we opened our own company in terms of an independent brand it was Easter 2008.
Yeah.
So prior to that, I was selling quite a bit, but obviously not under my own license and my own brand.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, that was April 2008.
And so when you went under your own license and brand, were you a solo agent? Did you form a team straight away, or?
Pretty much formed a team straight away.
Yeah.
Because of my life for that first sort of 10, 15 years of business was really hectic.
Yeah.
We had many plates that were spinning at the same time. So like I said, I couldn't see any other way to really do it. Plus, I always enjoyed sort of working with people in teams.
Yeah.
Because I'm good at some aspects, but there's other aspects I just don't really thoroughly enjoy and maybe not as proficient at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been a big believer in that sort of stay in your lane a little bit and get assistance in other areas. So yeah, I developed a team really early on, probably before I had the business to justify it.
Okay.
But we kind of backed ourselves in a little bit and went from there.
Yeah. So how did the prospecting look? Was it all just door knocking, or how?
So there was some door knocking, but back then, 20 years ago, and that's why I always find it's an interesting subject too, because how someone got successful, someone else then tries to leverage that understanding maybe 5 or 10 years later, and it's not necessarily going to work.
Yeah.
We invested heavily in terms of local area marketing, and I'd like to say we pioneered a couple of things. There was a thing called iProperty Post.
Yeah.
So it was like a A4 size. So what's that? Was 8 pages Z folded, which was just for real estate. So it hit every letterbox every week.
Wow.
So with that, back in the day, I think that was costing about $1,000 a week, which was a significant investment 20 years ago.
Yeah. Definitely.
So we'd done everything with absolute passion. So there was the financial investment in the marketing. Back then, and anyone that knows me well, I've told this story a few times, I worked in a team and we held over 50 listings, and we were opening 18 properties on a Saturday, 18 properties on a Sunday, and a team of 3.
Yeah.
And that meant there was some sellers that we couldn't get their properties open because there was just a vast amount of stock. And anyone that winds the clock back or wants to do the research, then 2009 come around, and I think they made some significant changes to the first homeowners grant.
Yeah.
We had 50 listings, and all of a sudden that was our first month. I think we'd done 108,000. We cracked the ton in 2009.
Yeah.
So things really started to escalate very quickly from there. So with 50-odd listings and, like I said, with that many home opens, 36 home opens across the Saturday and Sunday, mainly nearly in one suburb, perhaps 2, we had home open signs and call flutes everywhere. You couldn't not see us in the community.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And that was probably a pretty telling thing as well. The market wasn't that strong at that point in time, and there was a lot of people that were quite negative, but we were just oozing positivity and potential.
Yeah, okay.
So if there was an active buyer that was going to buy something, and that was one thing that I promised every seller. It wouldn't matter if we're doing a 10th home open, 1st or 15th, we'll bring the same energy to every open, to every buyer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Wow. Well, how would you say it's changed now? How are you getting most of your listings at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think things have changed just so rapidly, and not, real estate, any industry. But so probably now how I get in the listings, obviously been around for a while now. My hair's a little bit more silver than it was back 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of repeat and referred business. The other thing that we did adopt, though, in terms of technology and processes and databases like CRM systems, we certainly in the last sort of 5 to 6 years have really, really embraced that and researched a lot of the technologies that you can bolt on to complement the face-to-face service that we were providing for people.
Yeah.
So I think that's been pivotal. I remember a trainer, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago saying, real estate agents, you'll arguably be able to sell your database. And most of us in the room at that stage had a chuckle. We thought, oh, that's not ever going to happen. That's funny.
For sure.
Wind the clock forward to now, I think they were bang on.
For sure.
A well-maintained database is a pretty valuable asset.
Yeah. So being most of your, I'd say, leads and listings are warm now, do you still think that in a market where, what question was I going to ask? Do you think that data is still important? Is this probably the most important thing now?
Data as in, do you mean like potential clients' data or data as in market research?
What you've got, so your own CRM, for example, data that you've accumulated, is that probably the most important thing in your business at the moment?
I would say definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't rely on just data and systems to send emails or SMS campaigns and the like. I mean, it's got to be coupled with real human interaction as well, because we know definitely that if you've just got data in there, you've just got a name, a number and an address, and you're sending some property information without the human connection, it's probably not that valuable. Look, people that you might have transacted with and worked on their behalf over 10 or 15 years, probably a little different. It probably holds a bit more weight. But like everyone, there's so much white noise and people's inboxes are just getting, spammed, and that is hard to get people's attention these days. So data's good, but it's got to be sort of coupled with, what's the strength of the relationship.
With new agents, do you think that their primary focus should be just trying to get as much data as possible then and build their database?
Build the data, but I think most importantly is when you look through that data to say, do I know that person or do I know their property? Because if you do, there's a reasonably good chance they'll know you.
For sure.
There's lots on that. And I think we've got to have a chat. There's one of the trainers I think they had was like 900 doors, or I think the phrase may have been, which I like it. It's nice to have a target. If you're a new agent, I'd say your first couple of hundred is probably super important. And, good clean data and getting connected to that data and those people. Because, behind every data there's a name and a house and obviously a story that's unfolding. And that's the funny thing about property too. We never know, people have intentions sometimes to stay in a property for, maybe another 10 or 15 years, but life sometimes has a different plan and, in 6 months' time or 2 years' time, they may have to bring that decision forward.
Yeah, what would you say is more important, quality or quantity of data?
I'd definitely start with the quality. If you get the quality, I think the quantity will take care of itself over a period of time. And particularly to like quality and then providing a quality service that you can repeat through good systems and processes is absolutely key.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah, it's too hectic. People's lives are hectic. A real estate agent in the transaction, I think, from getting to know the potential seller right through to settlement and beyond, there's just so many touch points and so many little things that can happen without really, really quite stringent processes and systems. I really don't think you can provide an A-class service without them.
For sure. In terms of as being a solo agent, what would be the next step in terms of person that you'd join if you were wanting to create a team? Would you get admin on board? Would you get a prospector on board?
I would definitely depends on the individual, but you would hope that the agent knows that they're going to have to do the hard yards. They're going to have to meet people face to face and start to build those relationships. If you have too much of a short-term approach, you definitely will not be committed to that prospecting. So I think for most agents, administration support is probably key first off, because if that frees them up to then go and meet an extra, 5 people a day or whatever the case may be, an extra 20 people a week, if you do that consistently, it's an extra 1,000 people a year. So,
for sure. And do you think that people are getting lazy now with AI and other digital platforms in terms of their prospecting and adding people to the database? Do you think
I think there'll always be a tendency for that. Because if there's one thing that I've sort of observed a little bit, like I've got my son who's a young adult now and my daughter who's just turned 17. It's funny, with all this technology, I still find that sometimes even with younger people, sometimes communication skills are still not that strong, sometimes in terms of planning, and it sort of bemuses me a little bit. I'm thinking, with all this technology, how can they not communicate to know where everyone's going to be at a certain point in time, or if someone's plans change to communicate? So I think it's funny. I think we've got all this technology, but sometimes communication still isn't that clear. So I think you've got to be careful with that, definitely.
Okay.
Measuring and recording how many people you're sort of talking to and what your systems are, I think are, key.
Yeah, I think for a lot of new agents as well, just for any agent, I think dealing with a lot of rejection is quite hard, especially if you are prospecting and, you know, not everybody's needing to sell.
Yeah.
How would you get through, you know, tough patches, you know, whether it's prospecting or you've got low stock levels? How would you get through that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think if you've got low stock levels, whether you're starting out or you're an established agent and you've just gone into a bit of a dip, hopefully the motivation will be there. I think most people are pretty good at survival. If you're going to be in any sort of selling industry long term, I think that bit should be pretty instinctive.
Yeah,
that hunger should start before you deplete your resources too much.
Yeah. Okay.
So that bit for me should be reasonably easy. There should be a sense of people wanting to get out of bed and finding the next opportunity if that's the case. Conversely, though, probably the biggest problem is probably more when people are doing particularly well, and I've been there, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes when you're doing really well is probably the point where you got to be a bit careful, because if you have a prolonged period where you're doing really well, sometimes obviously you can take the foot off, rest a little bit, and just think it's going to keep coming.
Yeah. How would you keep your ego in check with that? Because I know obviously that's when the dip happens. If you've had a good month, you've listed.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful with that. Obviously, employed a lot of agents over a lot of years, and people that celebrate either too soon or celebrate too regularly. Mine has probably been, you know, that's all part of the journey, but you've got your eye on the next step.
Yeah.
You know, what are you aspiring to next, whether that's professionally or even personally? You know, whether it be holidays or you want to build your asset position or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I think as long as you know that, there's lots of sporting analogies, but great teams that go back-to-back or win 3 premierships or something like that, those in that dynasty, in that era, they never rested then, in that they use that past success just to keep sharpening their skills and, you know, to motivate them for more success.
How do you balance that with not burning out? Because obviously there's a fine line where you trying to make sure that you don't slack off, and then you get to a point where
well, look, I think most people, if they run any business that gets a heap of momentum, certainly that's a danger, and I think most people will burn out at some level. I don't think there's too many people that would have done a lot of business or had a lot of success that could honestly say that they were able to manage their energy levels and their lifestyle, work balance without burnout. You're probably going to encroach on that at some level.
Sure.
I remember early days, I reckon for a couple of years I probably run on vapours.
Yeah.
But I was young enough and had enough adrenaline and enough passion that sort of kept driving you.
Yeah.
But that can't last forever. So now I tend to certainly plan holidays and downtime a lot in advance.
For sure.
And also for me, my team structure and the people around is super important.
Yeah.
I would actually rather share a bit more of that and actually make a little bit less, but know that I'm going to have a reasonable sort of balance as well.
Yeah.
So I'm probably more focused on that now than I was 10 years ago, just in terms of obviously when you're on, make sure you're really on.
Yeah.
And then when you've planned for some downtime, you can do that effectively as well.
How did you find managing a business and a team at the same time?
Yeah, well, that's always difficult, but time blocking, again, it's process systems, and one part of that is probably time blocking, just to try and make sure. So there's a couple of things, time blocking, and then I think reflection in terms of, okay, what happened last week, last month, last quarter.
Yeah.
I think most people that have been in any sort of sales industry or even others, you've seen the wheel of life.
Yeah.
You remember the one where you put the numbers all around the outside?
Yeah.
So if I was running a business with that, you'd have business, team, family, health, etc. Just to see what might be getting out of kilter.
Yeah, okay, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's, having a team makes it a little bit easier with that, as you said, to be able to try and handle a few things and to make sure that everybody is getting enough rest and isn't burning out? Yeah,
definitely, and I'd encourage that too, because that if you've got a team, that team's got to work effectively. So sometimes that means someone else carries the load a little bit more, and even in a team, if you've got more than one selling person in a team, which I've always had, everyone within the team is really running and cultivating their own database and pipeline and funnel of future business. I'm there to help support that.
Yeah.
Some people in a team don't do that, but I've always been a big believer. I'm actually really open to people working in my team, having a direct relationship with the seller
Yeah.
and managing that sale process.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some teams obviously operate quite differently, where they've got their patches and they can't speak to the database. Where is your team quite open in terms of if you've spoken to a client and you've had someone sell, but then someone in their team calls them?
Yeah, that's fine. I think. Yeah, that's always been an interesting one. People can get a little bit protective of that. I think even internally within a team, like in terms of who's actually owns that relationship, who's got the highest relationship.
Yeah.
So that's probably something for me that I've had to let go of a little bit, in that I would sometimes pledge, we're all sort of making calls and connecting with a database, and so I might have my list of people that I've done business with. But sometimes if I've had too many other commitments, I'm better off with someone in the team still connecting and having a real conversation with them than me intend on doing that and then a quarter slips by and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's just trying to, probably the longer I'm in it, you get a bit more relaxed with that and know that that kind of team first thing. We're better off someone within the team that's qualified, knows our operating system, knows the team dynamics, connecting with that person, than us going out and trying to connect with some cold data.
Yeah.
Work the people. When I say work, that's probably not the best explanation, but keep in contact, keep the relationship really strong with the people that we've already got, that we've transacted with, or have appraised that haven't yet gone to market, rather than try and go out there and get new details. Yeah,
do you have a system and process where you try and speak or make a connection with, a person in your database? How many times per year, or?
Yeah, so normally, look, depending upon obviously the discussion, because that can move.
Yeah.
So like I said, you might have someone there that's quite legitimately said, look, we've just put a pool in and an extension. Our youngest child has just started high school.
Yeah.
So, our longer term plan is we're not going to be out of here until they finish high school.
Yeah.
And at about that time, my husband's close to retiring, just as an analogy.
Yeah.
So those people, you might go, okay, they're going to get 4 market reports a year just with updates.
Yeah.
But we'd probably call twice yearly just to check in. And not only check in, but just give them a little bit of an insight as to what's happening around them.
Yeah.
Because if that went to plan, obviously they're not going to do anything for 5 or 6 or perhaps 7 years. Mm-hmm. But it's nice for them just to hear from you just a little bit what's happening in the local sort of environment, or perhaps at a state level, depending upon what their plans are.
Yeah, okay.
And as I said before, sometimes, things change.
Yeah.
And what we want, if something does change, is we want them to know that we were interested in them, their family and their life well before they had an intention to sell.
Yeah.
So hopefully they come back to us.
With obviously clients getting updates on a regular basis, they're starting to become a little bit more in tune with the market. How do you manage their expectations?
Yeah, I think because more agents are probably doing that now, and information is so readily available.
Yeah.
Like back, if we wind that conversation back to the start where I said real estate agents were the gatekeeper of information 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They had a login which only they had, and you print out these reports which had all this data which they'd never seen before, or perhaps they could get it from the bank if they were lucky, but not so much. Today, you're right, like even pretty savvy, resourceful homeowners can really get the information themselves if they want it.
Yeah.
Some don't, though. I think there's people, and that's really a part of building relationships. They could go and get it themselves, but if they trust and got a relationship with an industry professional, most of the time they probably want to drop them a text or give them a call just to say, hey, quick, give me an update, because they trust the information and they don't have to go searching for it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think sellers are less worried about an agent's opinion when they've got so much information readily available?
I'd like to think maybe they're less interested in an agent's opinion when they're not right in that, that pre-sale 4 to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are still interested in the agent's opinion when they're getting pretty close to making a decision.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might get people which haven't really had a strong engagement for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they've got an itch, something might happen, and it's 6 weeks out. The question and the questions that they will ask will obviously get a lot more finite in terms of what's happening now, and probably more what if, what do we think, hey, how about this, is an interest rate drop, that could be imminent, is that going to make a dramatic change on the market or whatever the case may be. I find that, the discussion changes up pretty rapidly if someone's really in that, I'm almost ready to sell.
For sure. Do you think that with the market being reasonably good at the moment, most people are trying to go off market if they can, and what impact do you think that has on the price?
Yeah, look, I think probably not so much. So sort of middle of last year, perhaps, there was some people that had a tendency to do that. Personally, I was never a massive fan, just simply because if a market's really hot, you know, in the shortest amount of words, I'd say you want to actually take the property to market and to put it into a competitive environment.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something off market, you know, even with data, but just as an example, if we said, okay, the data says 800, you'd almost want an off-market opportunity to be 850 or high eights to make it worthwhile. Because what we've seen, obviously, last year in the market with, you know, multiple offers on almost every property, is we were really surprised and sellers were surprised, and that's what you get in a quickly changing market.
Yeah. Definitely.
So, in some of those off-market opportunities, I think, you know, perhaps there was still money left on the table in some instances.
Yeah, okay.
Horses, of course, sometimes it might suit a seller.
Yeah.
And they might say, okay, well, look, that's the right decision for us to take that now, because if I can take that money, I can do something else with it.
Yeah.
And respect that as well.
For sure. Look, speaking of properties, I know there's been a couple of sales that I'd love to just pick your brain on. It's just a little segment where you can dive into how you met the clients, you know, what's the process, if there are any challenges along the way.
Sure.
One of them being 23 Rutherglen Circle in Kinross, a pocket quite close to the office that you work in.
Yep. So that particular property was an interesting one. It was a particularly large piece of land. Had, you know, a reasonably nice home on it with a big man shed, man cave out the back of the garage.
Yeah.
So when I met the owners of that particular home, because they'd been selling not too far from them, and we'd been just doing a little bit of local area marketing, and they'd seen that we'd been pretty active over that sort of 6 months prior. So we had an invitation to appraise the property. Those particular owners at that point I didn't know really well, but connected pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know, diverse interests with that. Some of the things in the man cave in terms of cars and their interest in AFL and things like that. We had a pretty mutual sort of interest in a lot of the sort of sports and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, really good properties. So with one like that, there was no comparable sales data, so that was going to be interesting. And so we used a online selling platform via open negotiation.
Yeah.
And I remember that one particularly well because I think we had about 37 people through the first open, 37 groups, and you're probably averaging 3 people through, so it's like over 100 individuals walking through the home.
For sure.
And we had a ton of interest. I remember in particular the husband had a price that he wanted to try and achieve.
Yeah.
And we had early interest at pretty much that price, which then they wanted to see if there was anything left.
Of course.
And you know, my honest advice to them was, look, we can't predict the future with any absolute certainty, but yes, you've got a unique home in terms of the size and the attributes that it's got. It's obviously going to be pretty well fought after, but I can't tell you whether or not there's an extra 10, 20 or 50 in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Thankfully for the husband, there was a little bit more money after, which that's the other thing too, even in a hot market, like we probably could have sold that same afternoon. We'd done a midweek viewing and we opened, I think, the Saturday, Sunday from memory the following weekend and closed it off on the next Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so we got a marginally better outcome. So I was relieved for the sellers and happy for them at the same time.
Yeah, there's a fine line. How do you educate sellers in when to accept an offer?
Yeah, well, look, I think with that too, like the whole thing, the bit I enjoy about it is the less I try not to have too much polish in terms of sales jargon. And I always, particularly people like that, I hadn't sold for them before. I hadn't sold for any of their family members, so I was invited in because we, like I said, we were reasonably active in the immediate area just prior. So getting that rapport and having real conversations early on is super important.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you've got that level of trust where they're opening up and telling you, you know, and I get that a lot too. Sometimes if you get people and you haven't known them that long, but they're actually telling you their story in detail, and that we know that it's a really open communication waves, that makes for such a better transaction. Because, that's the thing. The funny thing with property is, like I always say to people, it's not like a mineral or iron ore or gold prices. We can't go to the ASX and say what's it worth today.
Yeah.
The commodity is worth something different to each buyer for many different reasons.
Yeah. Do you think some sellers put a bank valuation on a pedestal?
Yes, initially, but initially I think we've got to provide some context around why you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So things like CoreLogic or RP Data with their automated market valuations, I use them a lot. I take them into most appraisals, but I actually say to people, sometimes when I go through the property, they could be fairly accurate. They could be out by a fair bit. I mean, it's hard to appraise property without actually walking through the home.
Yeah.
So digital reports and assumptions and things like that are one thing, but I think you need to walk through the property. And the other thing, which I think is true too, look, when someone's selling a house or buying a house, most of the time they're in the market for a pretty short period of time.
Yeah.
So our job is to make sure that we present the property, market the property exceptionally well, and to find out the opportunities in the market in terms of that week. In a hot market, like who's in the market over that week, fortnight.
For sure.
If we wound the clock back to 2018-19, we're trying to say, well, who's in the market over 100 days? We probably only find one active buyer that was in the market over those 100 days.
Yeah.
So that market's a lot more difficult for sellers too, because who is that one buyer and why are they buying?
Yeah.
Whereas I find, a medium balanced market or a hot market, if the relationship between the agent and the owner is strong and transparent, that should really make the seller's job quite easy, because we get enough market evidence so they can pick where's the right opportunity with the right buyer.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I'd love to dive into another one you've got in Burns Beach that sold also last year, 38 Mattingley's approach.
Yep.
Just love to know how that one went. Obviously, it
Sure.
was something that I think was ready to go, but wanted to spruce up just before photos were taken.
Correct. So my owners with that one did reside in the property initially, but then moved overseas. And they've been overseas for some time, so the property I think had been rented out maybe for the 7 or 8 years prior to that.
Yeah.
Cracking property, like a single-storey home, 3-car garage. So for modern suburbia, it was a good-sized block. Where, parking, if you drive around Burns Beach, sometimes is a little bit of an issue, particularly because you've got big homes with a lot of teenage and adult kids living in properties, but the property lacks parking. So this one being a ground level with a 3-car garage was really good. I knew it would obviously be pretty sought after in the marketplace as well. So the good thing with that was, though, even in a good marketplace, the owners were really, really good to work with. So I went through and we took a heap of photo videos, and then we reverse engineered it in terms of the tenants that were vacating, in terms of the improvements that we thought the property was required. And we staged the property as well with a company that we work with all the time that do an amazing job. Just on staging, as a side note, I always say to people, look, if you spend $1 on staging, I reckon you'll get $5 in return. It just,
for sure.
Makes the property pop. People get a better appreciation for room sizes and things like that. So that one was interesting. I'd probably done more work in terms of the project management size, because we had the property fully painted internally, externally, cleaned, staged, and then we've done a lot with the marketing as well. So, like I said, I can honestly say we put more hours into the preparation of that home than we did actively when we were on the market selling it.
Yeah. How do you encourage sellers to prepare their home properly when the market's so good?
Yeah, I just, just more around that adage. I think if something, because property, like I said, is such a gut feel, like I said, because it's not a tangible price. So my philosophy around that always, if it looks good, smells good, most of the time you're going to have more competition for it.
For sure.
So in a nutshell, what should we do as agents? We want to be able to make sure that the home, the product, we can get that to be, fought over to the best possible level. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the time I'd rather people do things in terms of presentation, in terms of paints, gardens, cleaning, staging, I'm not necessarily a big fan to say, geez, you should remodel a kitchen and bathrooms.
Yeah, for sure.
In some instances, but in lots of instances, not necessarily the case. Let's do more about the presentation, because the buyer can then, if they want to, strip out kitchens or bathrooms, they can perhaps do that to their own style when they own the property.
Yeah, what do you say when they say someone else will just do what they want? In terms of they'll pick their own
if they don't
colour.
want to do anything?
Yeah.
Well, look, I've got to be honest with that too, because it's a little bit like an owner too. If they ask us a question, I want to give them an honest answer. So they're going to have to own the outcome of that.
Yeah. Okay.
So if I get people like that, which you do from time to time, I probably say, okay, I understand that you're probably not really that open to doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
That you got the opinion that the market's really strong and you don't need to spend a cent. You're going to make a good gain. I would then probably say, look, at an absolute minimum, I would suggest, A, B, and C.
Yeah. Okay.
Which might be a clean, it might be a little partial paint, it could be,
Sure.
whatever else, might be apparent at the property at that point in time.
Yeah. And over your 15 to 20 year career, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?
The biggest lesson I've learnt is, I guess you just got to, stay, you spoke about ego before, stay humble, stay curious. There was another little acronym I remember, CANI, constant never-ending improvement. So I really reckon that too, because, as an industry, as a profession, it's changed significantly over the last 20 years. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really, really happy to say that. I think the professionalism of the industry and thing has just matured so much over 2 decades.
For sure.
Yeah. Whereas, look, I honestly, I think when I got into the industry, there was probably, maybe 5% of the profession that were professional and done it well. I think it's nearly flipped on its head now. I'm proud to say I reckon probably at least, there's always room for improvement. But I think, to try and put a number on, I think 70, 80% of people really are professional and got a good care factor and care about outcomes and results for their clients.
Yeah, for sure.
And the process and things like that, and actually put a lot of time and effort in terms of that continued learning so that they can actually have a better experience for their client.
Yeah.
So that's the upside. Always room for improvement, but that's definitely the upside in the last sort of decade or two. Just touching on that too, I think we are in a little bit of, anyone in sales should like the thrill of the result and a pat on the back. So probably one thing that a lot of the platforms now that allow for testimonials, I think that went a big way in terms of lifting the bar in terms of the standards that we provide as an industry.
Yeah,
because hearing what your sellers or your buyers actually really enjoyed about the purchasing process or the sale process, I think just really reinforced the bits that we were doing well.
Yeah,
and perhaps even areas where they really enjoyed some aspects, but they felt let down in another.
Yeah,
give us an opportunity to try and fix some things there over the journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that people lean towards an agent that has more honest reviews than just seeing the full 5 stars, or do you think they're still leaning towards a full 5-star review and they've not had any blemishes?
Yeah, look, I don't know 100%. I do remember hearing a speaker at an event, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago now, and I thought it was interesting because they said, way before the internet sort of got to the speed it's got now, people would ask their friends, oh, do you know a plumber? Do you know an electrician? Or I need a physiotherapist, or whatever the case may be. And people would take that family or work colleague recommendation and just say, oh, well, that's Jordan's physio. Yep, I'm happy to go there.
Yeah.
So the thing, I think, the thing with the speed and the internet thing that's changed a little bit is the quote that I heard from the speaker said, people will ask their sphere of influence if they've got someone they can recommend, but most people then will also do an online search just to verify what their friend or family member has told them.
Yeah.
So I think it's two-pronged. I think people still like that to their community, whoever has recommended someone, but that must stack up online as well, I think, just to verify their recommendation.
Yeah, definitely. I think with technology progressing dramatically over the last, decade, what do you think AI has to play? What role do you think AI will play in?
Well, I think a lot bigger. I think we've probably only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
but it's becoming significant.
Do you think there'd ever be another kind of purple brick situation come back?
I can't see it because I think it's nearly gone the other way. So we sort of worked through that over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Like there certainly was a time where people were going, there might have been real estate brand, and that brand gets so strong that if an agent in their own right wants to be successful, you've got to be part of that brand. So I think they coexist now, but I still think a brand without great people isn't going to do particularly well.
Yeah.
A really good brand needs those great people to complement each other.
Yeah.
So, no, I still think people, I think things are speeding up. So I think real estate as a professional industry will be, like, obviously that I've worked in a team for a long time, and there's certain parts of the role which I don't get heavily involved in because I'm not that good at it. I actually enjoy the interaction with the people side, whether it's preparation, understanding the market, and the marketing, so that when we do hit day 1 hour, day one on the marketplace, we are prepped and we're geared and we're well ready to go.
Yeah.
So that side of things, I think what AI and administration support will help with is good agents should be able to spend more time right at the pointy end of the listing or the sale.
Yeah, perfect. Well, look, wrapping things up, I'll probably be a bit selfish and ask what advice you'd give me. Obviously, I've been in your team for 7 years, but now venturing out by myself, just seeking what would be your best piece of advice for me for this year.
Sure. Okay, that's a good question. We'll see if it makes the cutting room floor. No, no, it's been a pleasure, Jordan, for 7 years. And realistically, obviously, I want to see you have massive success. So probably the two things for mine is you are humble, so you're going to be fine there. So I'm not too worried about that at all. It's probably just honest reflection. There's a good thing I used to do it regularly, like on a Sunday night. Is a good time to have a look at the week you just had.
For sure.
What does the scoreboard look like in terms of what appointments did you have, what listings, did you get any offers, even tracking back through your call log for that week. What, you'll have a feeling inside you, but did the diary and the results back up the feeling?
For sure.
So that's the reflection, but not dwelling on that in too much of a negative too, because if you look back over the course of a week and you go, geez, I wasn't quite on my A game last week, gives you an opportunity to get a good night's rest and start Monday with a new headspace to make sure, because that's the thing in real estate. So you want to, a bad day's okay, the odd bad week's acceptable as well, we're all human.
Yeah.
But you don't want to let it roll into a bad month or a bad quarter.
Yeah, for sure.
Certainly we can have fluctuations in market, which sometimes you can't control. There's external factors that can happen, or you're thrown a curveball of life and a little thing happens which derails you for a period.
Yeah.
That's all just part of, if you're doing anything, for long enough, that's going to happen anyway. But it's really just trying to own that next day, that week, so you control the outcomes.
Yeah, perfect.
And that's
Excellent.
it. Boom.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks
no
so
worries.
much.
Pleasure.
Cheers, Brett.